What's up, everybody? Episode 301 of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. Got a great show for you today. I'm going to be using you selfishly to practice my presentation for tonight. We're having our fourth installment, me and Dr. Andrey, of how to have the healthiest heart around. My part is the fitness and the fasting. Dr. Andrey speaks on the medical aspect of cardiovascular health and disease. Before I get to that, we had a great weekend away in the Poconos, really good times. I'm not much of a skier, but I'm learning. Saturday was pretty much Emma and Daddy time as Devin took the boys up to the top of the mountain. Braxton's getting really good. Devin's an excellent skier. Colty's learning, so I wasn't going to be much help with Emma. But the day before, we were all out there in the slopes. Devin taking two of them down, Braxton going by himself, and then them getting to watch Daddy stumble and bumble down the green slope. It wasn't a big one, it was a green one. And it was a great reset for my mind. Great training for this weekend. We got Mount Washington coming up. I'm going to attempt again. I didn't make it last year. Some of the guys did. Attempt to summit Mount Washington. We're leaving Friday. We climb on Saturday, 6,200 feet. Conditions are going to be crazy. There's 8 of us going, 2 guides. Maybe next week, that's what I'll be talking about. So keep me in your thoughts with that we can get there and get up the mountain safely and get back down safely. Fasting is not necessarily something that people think about when it comes to heart health. So let me pull up my presentation here. The main things that I want you to take away from this is that the heavier you are, I think we can all agree that if you're heavier, it's not as good for your heart health. Keep it very simple. So let's address why would you be heavier? And it's a vicious cycle. It's not as simple as knowing that you shouldn't overeat or that knowing that you are overeating. It's driven by the hormones. And when people decide that they have to change their body, they begin to think about, well, I got to diet. I got to watch what I'm eating. One of the biggest mistakes that I see that even the fake fitness experts all over the place still espouse is this math equation for weight loss. And they take the approach that fat loss is sequential. They take the approach that it's simultaneous when it's not. It is actually sequential. Simultaneous model is cut this food, burn more over here, and you're going to lose weight. And we know that doesn't happen. If it happens very briefly, and then boom, they blow back up or completely blow their plan. Fat loss is sequential. Weight loss is sequential. You got to empty the fridge up on your main level to get to the freezers down in the freezer, the big box freezers. That is the weight, the excess weight and the fat that we want to get off. But we can't have a reason to go down there and tap into those stores, those freezers in the basement, unless we empty out the fridge upstairs. And we do that through not putting as much into it as often and keeping that fridge door shut. Every time that light goes on, think of that as an insulin spike. Insulin signals your body to store. So that is the first thing that I will be teaching tonight. Inflammation and insulin resistance are really the same thing. You cannot have one without the other. To the best of my knowledge, the best that I could connect the dots, one cannot exist without the other. So I always refer to them as the same thing. When you have high cortisol and high insulin, that equals a recipe for disaster. Think of the man that has a big beer belly. That's high insulin, high cortisol. They should not both be high at the same time. We do not want that. Again, insulin signals us to store. Cortisol can signal us to burn or to build. When people get stressed, some people lose weight, some people gain weight. The people that lose, cortisol is used to burn in those situations. The people that gain are stress eating. Insulin's high. Cortisol's high. They stress eat, insulin goes high, and they get this visceral fat around their organs, which is very dangerous. We don't want that. Couple quick changes that people can make before I dive into the fasting. Sodium. So I go over the sodium myth. Then the sodium myth is really that we should keep sodium low. That's one of the biggest health lies ever told. And almost everything you know from the mainstream about health is incorrect. And I believe it's a part of a conspiracy to keep people unhealthy, to keep people hooked into big pharma, to keep people, basically coming back to the hand that feeds them, so to speak. You need sodium. You need it in adequate amounts. We do not want to keep sodium low. That goes right in there with the low carb myth. When you get enough sodium in, sleep improves, energy and metabolism improves. Every cell in your body has a sodium-potassium pump. Sodium in, potassium out, and vice versa. When we don't have sodium and potassium in correct numbers or quantities, those pumps become sluggish, metabolism goes down, energy goes down. Mental focus will improve with sodium. Sexual performance will improve with sodium. They've even done studies where the only change they make with people that are infertile and cannot get pregnant is they increase sodium levels, and boom, people get pregnant. Fitness performance is going to improve. This is the number one supplement you could take is sodium, hands down. 3.5 to 5 grams a day is what you should be aiming for. Next simple thing you want to focus on, and it's not as simple as me or anybody telling you to sleep more, is just start getting in bed by 10 or 10:30. Sleep is the king. Sleep is the best diet in the world. Sleep is what really controls the hormones. Fasting is right. Fasting is like the prince. Sleep is the king. Sleep is where your brain and your body recover and repair themselves. It's when growth hormone is really output to a very large degree, which keeps your blood vessels nice and healthy and keeps you young. You need sleep to get more into the the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, which is rest, digest, sleep, recover. That is the part of your nervous system you want to be in predominantly. The other side, the hot rod side, when you got the pedal to the metal, is the sympathetic side, which is fight, flight, or freeze. That's stress. That's go, go, go. We got to have a balance, and it should be much more weighted towards the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're having trouble sleeping, the first thing is start getting into your bedroom at an earlier time. That's the first thing. Then there's other stuff we can do to address that. But when you don't sleep well, chance for developing type 2 diabetes skyrockets. It creates insulin resistance within the body. When you sleep consistently 6.5 or less hours a night, your risk for developing cancer later in life more than doubles. That's pretty scary. So we want to keep that in mind. And essentially, lack of sleep is going to make your brain behave like it's on cannabis as far as the hunger hormones. It's an uphill battle. And you'll notice when you don't get a good night's sleep how much more difficult your hunger is to manage than when you get adequate sleep. So keep that in mind. Cardiovascular disease, we're getting 6.5 or less hours a night. Cardiac arrest, these things all skyrocket. 200% more likely to have a heart attack or stroke when you're getting 6 hours or less per night. Think about that. And there was even studies that I've read where with pro athletes, when they are not getting 7-8 hours a night, the injury rate dramatically spikes up as well. So sleep is king. A couple exercise myths, and then I'll dive into the fasting. I want to make sure everybody's getting all their bases covered here. Always ask yourself the goal when we're talking about exercise. The goal is to keep the goal the goal. Do you want to be an endurance athlete? If the answer is no, then why are you jogging on a treadmill? It makes zero sense. Exercise is pretty much completely useless the way most people think it should be used for weight loss. It's more for your brain, your strength, your joints, and make you more insulin sensitive. But it doesn't fit into the sequential model. That's a simultaneous model. Burn, 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 burn. Doesn't work. Just go to any gym. Look at the people that start on the treadmills at the beginning of January that have New Year's resolutions. Go back in 2 months and tell me if any of them look any different or if they're even still there. Not going to happen. If you wanted to create a great exercise program and you didn't know what else to do, our acronym we use in our proprietary method at Newell Strength is FAST, P-H-A-S-T, peripheral heart action strength training. You want to get the blood pumping head to toe. Work as much muscle as you can. You can push, you can pull, you can do a squat pattern, you can do a hip pattern, and you can carry stuff. Put that in a circuit. Do it as many times as you can in a certain amount of time, and you are golden as far as your exercise program goes. Now let's go over the Panda fasting. I created the Panda, well, I should say the seed of the Panda was first created back in 2012. What happened then is I had a very devastating knee injury, a lot of you know about, and I wound up doing the same thing to the other knee in 2014, but that's after the Panda seed was created. And I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show to come back from this injury in 2014. And about 8 weeks out, again, it's a devastating injury. My leg was mangled. And that used to be my strength, was my legs. Right? That was my prime time when it came to bodybuilding and as an athlete. But I'm reading this book by Lyle McDonald, 8 weeks out from the 2 shows I'm doing in 2014, and I read about stubborn fat. I'm talking, the stubborn fat typically for men is lower belly, lower abdomen, love handles. For women, it's typically the glutes and the thighs. And the reason it's stubborn is that it has a different type of fat cell receptor. Okay, it's an alpha receptor, which means the blood flow is not as good there. And if we're looking at getting rid of stubborn fat, we have to increase blood flow to those areas. And lo and behold, the main way, pretty much the only way you can do that, is through fasting. So I went to a 16-8 protocol at that point, did 2 meals a day, and it changed my life forever as far as eating goes. Gave me I had a lot of body image issues, a lot of control around food, and this changed everything. But I knew I was on to something. It wasn't until 2019 when I created the Panda. I started doing longer form fasting. Created the Panda in 2019 when I was in bed with the flu, a terrible case of the flu. I jotted it out, and I made an episode around that recently. So you have the 3 phases of fat loss. Now, what goes on when you fast as far as your hormones? We want to limit insulin. That's the main thing, make you more insulin sensitive. We want cortisol to continue to rise after we wake up in the morning. And with that, growth hormone is going to rise. If insulin goes up, you eat a traditional breakfast or meal, cortisol is going to go back down. Insulin is going to signal your body to store. Forget about weight loss. I could go very complex with that stuff, but that's basically what's happening when we're fasting, limiting insulin output. We want to heal your insulin resistance, make you more insulin sensitive. Your brain function is going to greatly improve when you fast. Growth hormone, low levels of epinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, all make you more alert. They make you more focused. They make you lock in on what you're doing. It's like you're going out for the hunt. You're going out for the kill. When you're in a fasted state, you're going to be much more effective when you're in a fasted state than if your belly is full. You're not going to be as sharp. Just think about how you feel after you eat a big meal versus how you feel when you've gone a day without food. Which one are you going to be locked in more? Digestion greatly improves. Inflammation is reduced in the gut. Stress depletes something called hydrochloric acid in your stomach. Eating too often will also wreak havoc on that. Fasting allows us to heal and replenish. Your gut health is tied into your brain health. That's the reason it's called the second brain, the gut feeling. Most of your neurotransmitter production is produced in your gut. Fasting is going to improve this process, especially when you're eating the type of foods that I recommend. I'm going to give you a hint, a lot of fruit. Fruit is the main thing that you should be eating. That should be the dominant factor in your nutrition, should be fruit, before anything else. And I was actually just reading a book this morning, 100-year-old book, and this professor is saying the same exact thing about fasting and fruit. And I never read this guy's book before, but isn't that interesting? And this guy changed lives, right? I've never even heard any other fasting experts talk about having fruit first. Some of them still try to say that fruit is bad for you, which is, if somebody tells you that, just walk away from them because they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to health and nutrition. Zero. Okay. Autophagy is something too, guys, you can only get through fasting. That's when your body goes through, clips off dead parts of cells, damaged parts of cells and excretes them or recycles them and repairs them. That only happens when you're in like a one meal a day or approaching 24 hours. Remember, it takes 6 hours to enter a fasted state. Once again, 6 hours to enter a fasted state. Once you eat, and you think about this, most people are never in a fasted state because let's say they ate at 8 o'clock at night, then they go to sleep, but let's say they're eating a breakfast at like 6 o'clock, so 10 hours later. So they have 4 hours of fasting. Then they're getting to eat throughout the day. Not very good. That's not what we want. Now, what happens with the typical North American diet versus fasting? Everybody wants to focus on metabolism. That's pretty much set in stone. There's big downturns throughout your life, or downturns, I should say. Late 20s, mid 30s, early 40s. For guys, it's pushed back about 5 years. But that doesn't really matter. You don't lose weight by increasing your metabolism. That's a big myth. Now, metabolism can upregulate or downregulate 40%, but the typical North American diets, all these things out there, these low-carb things and all this, and you name it, they're basically downregulating your metabolism. Metabolism is going to lower to match the input that's coming in when food is your primary energy source. With fasting, the opposite thing happens. Metabolism actually go up by 5 to 13%, which is pretty awesome. And that has to do with the mitochondria of the cell. Hunger hormones will go up when you cut calories drastically. So metabolism's coming down, hunger's going up, boom, you blow your diet. Fasting, hunger hormones come down over time. The opposite effect, which is awesome. Traditional model, again, is based on simultaneous weight loss. It works very, very, very short term before the hormones come back to bite you in the butt. Fasting is the opposite. It's sequential. Why have we been told to eat the way we have? Really, the big part of it, there's two big parts, and I made a whole thing about the conspiracy of fasting. There's a huge lack of expertise for people that actually want to do good for people. Huge, huge lack of expertise with this. I don't even think they're still teaching this fasting in college nutrition, right? In marketing. Marketing from who? The food companies, but then go up more levels from that, maybe big pharma. You got to think about, go back and listen to the conspiracy one that I did. Keeping people sluggish and dumbed down, that's very beneficial for the powers that be and for big pharma. So you always got to think about, why am I being told that I should eat like this when clearly hormonally we can't argue that fasting is the way to go. Obstacles that you're going to have to look out for. First, I want you to reframe. Your body fat is food. Body fat is food. It's fuel. Every pound of fat you have contains about 3,500 caloric units as energy. So if you want to lose 10 pounds of fat, you got to burn through 35,000 calories of energy. But you're not going to do that if you're constantly eating. You got to give your body a reason to tap into those fat stores. And food is a drug. It affects the internal biochemical hormonal environment of the body. Food is a drug. When you break off of food and eating it so often, I need to eat, I can't go more than 2 hours, I'm going to get low blood sugar and all this silliness, that's food withdrawal symptoms. The big roadblocks you're going to face are the hunger pangs, which only last a minute or two, 5 within a long hunger pang. Again, that's going to tie back to sleep as well. And that ties into entrainment patterns. When you've trained your body to expect food over time, you're going to get hunger signals. That's going to lessen over time. And other people are going to tell you this is not good for you. Don't listen to them. Look at the shape they're in. Look at what they do. Maybe they're thin, but that's probably just how they are. Look at their blood work. And there are people that can eat 3-4 meals a day, and they're okay. But if it's the same thing, I always say this to people, eating 3-4 times a day or eating once a day, if it's the same thing, why would you not eat once a day? It's going to give you more time. That's the most valuable thing you have. And I still haven't heard anybody rebut that argument yet. It makes no sense when you actually break this stuff down. Misconceptions, starvation mode, that's exactly what happens when you follow the typical diet. Muscle loss, not going to happen with fasting. It's actually very muscle preserving as far as what goes on hormonally. And this idea that you need to eat breakfast and have frequent feedings, it's all tied around speeding up your metabolism, all marketing, all nonsense. Breakfast was really introduced largely about 100 to 150 years ago. People don't know the history of it that well. but it's not a normal thing to wake up and eat. Completely not normal. All you got to do is look at the hormones to see that. I would stay away from sugar and animal meat to a large degree when you're on your plan. Use it to enjoy it, but start cutting down on this stuff. They both cause inflammation at the cellular level, both cause major insulin responses. Okay, let's see. What would I do then? What would I do if I was you and I had all this information? I would begin fasting. You can either dive right into the deep end like I have people do in Panda, or cut how many meals you're doing by a third for the week. Start with that. Eat a lot of stuff that grew from the ground and start getting in bed by 10:30. That's how I would start. That's what I'm going to tell people tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something through my rehearsal. I love teaching about this stuff. It's a little tricky looking back and forth with the PowerPoint just to make sure I'm staying on track. But we got the next Panda starting up on March 14th. Still got room in that, and I'll be teaching you, and I'll be having revamped lessons with that. It's a killer program. It's like nothing else out there. You will change your life. You will transform your life if you do it. And we got ripped ads, so keep that in mind. Thanks for the support, everybody. Later.